Welcome, everybody. My name is Paul Upex from the training team, usually based at Labour Party head office, but for the last year, been coming to you from the sunny south coast of Margate. Welcome to the final candidate drop-in session for these important elections coming up on the 6th of May. I've been joined tonight by two fantastic individuals and friends of local government. Thangam Debonair, MP, Shadow Secretary of State for Housing, and Councillor James Dawson, Deputy Leader of Erewash Borough Council as well. We're going to be hearing from them a little bit later, well, very soon. But I just want to tell you a little bit about how tonight's session is going to work. I'm going to go through the slides and tell you a little bit what's going to happen. The session will be recorded, so if you've missed something, don't worry about that. If you've got questions, please pop them in the Q&A. Also, if you want to just chat and say hello to each other, please do that using the chat box as well. And my colleague Ellie from the local government team will be in there putting in some of the links, putting in some of the upcoming sessions. But also, if you've got any other questions that might just be not to our panel, then we'll do our best to answer them as well. The aim for the session tonight is to give you a brief overview of where we are politically and organisationally, but also the opportunity is to ask questions of both Thangam and James as well that you might have that's come along to you on the doorstep, on the telephone, any question even to myself from the training team, how we can help you between now and the 6th of May as well. So please don't be afraid to ask as well. There's a little bit of what we're covering. I'm going to go over to Thangam in a minute and then over to James. Then we're going to look at some ideas and top tips about building volunteers. If you haven't got enough volunteers, what you can do between now and polling day. You please share your ideas and what you're doing as well. We're going to obviously mention getting out your postal votes as well. They're going to be starting to drop in many places across the country as well. They've already started dropping up in Scotland as well. We're going to look at getting out your vote, GOTV, what you can do in those all-important last 5 days, that weekend before, not just on polling day. Staying safe and keeping our communities safe as well. Just a reminder of what you can and can't do. Other things about how you can get involved, what's coming up, and further help and information as well. As I said there, the session, including the questions, including the slides, should last just under an hour as well. So it'll fly by as well. So if you have got questions, do put them in the Q&A and we'll get over to them during the session as well. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand over to Thangam, who's got between about 5 to 10 minutes or so, just to tell us a little bit where we are politically, your experiences of local government, what it's been like for you out on the doorstep as well. So over to you, Thangam.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks everyone for coming this evening. Gosh, what's it been like so far? Isn't it hard to describe this election is unlike any other I've ever known? What I remember is that this time last year, my diary was full of things that we weren't allowed to go to. I ended up with a very well-tended garden, but putting on quite a lot of weight because I missed my normal election round of tramping the streets. So I'm very happy to be back on the streets. I've used Doorstep I've used Doorstep app, and we've used Sheets, and I've done a lot of dialogue. I am heartily sick of those hold music themes, whatever you call them. But I have found that talking to people through a mask is infinitely, it's just great to be back on the doorstep. So even though it's weird, it's great to be talking to people. I hope you found it so as well. I found it really energizing, particularly this weekend for a lot of us, I know not everywhere, the weather was good. People seem to be a bit more cheerful. We're getting to the point now where people can see not quite the end in sight, but they can see the sight to the end in sight of the crisis. So it felt really good to be out and about. I was first selected as a parliamentary candidate under what was then called the Key Seat Candidates Programme in 2012. I was a candidate for 3 years, so I've only recently sort of overtaken myself in terms of the amount of time I've been an MP. Now, it's not completely true anymore. It just feels like it felt like a very long time at the time. And before that, I had been a council candidate. And my job when I was Key Seat candidate, I was the 105th on a list of 106. So I was not expected to win in 2015. My job was to build capacity to get people skilled, equipped, and feeling like they were part of a team, so that we could all not just help in our seat, but help in neighbouring seats. And I made a lot of cake and a lot of biscuits. I don't quite know how that fits into a COVID world. Certainly, I used to have a lot of people around my house eating said cake and biscuits after and before canvassing sessions. In fact, I remember my Sunday morning breakfasts used to be fairly well known, that people would come round to mine first to get a big breakfast, and then we'd all go out and campaign. Can't do that yet. We will be able to one day. But I think building a team of volunteers is one of the most important things that you can do. Obviously, the most important thing you can do is get elected. But nobody gets elected on their own. You only get to change stuff if you're elected, but you only get elected if you've got people with you. If you can convince people to come out and knock on doors in all weathers and in all circumstances and feel part of a team, that is what you've got that's special. Because that, for me, you're it, basically. You as candidates, you're it. You are there to be a leader in your community, to be that person who inspires other people to want to get out and not just to sit in the garden. And that's really important, because you are equipping not just the volunteers for your campaign, but the volunteers for a neighbouring wards campaign, for a neighbouring constituencies campaign, and for the general election campaign that we hope will come soon, so that we can turf out this rotten Tory government. Member mobilisation, in my view, is one of the most important things that you could possibly be doing. And in the last few weeks, I think it's a great opportunity to up your game on member mobilisation. If you've already got 6 loyal volunteers, see if you can get it to 12. If you've got 12, see if you can get it to 24. If you can double it over the next couple of weeks, that's an amazing thing to do, because then you need to keep those volunteers with you to keep going with the door knocking all year round. So you're starting to build that profile for yourself, for your campaigns, and also to help us win the next general election. Opposition is, also it's a noble calling to be a Labour opposition, but it's very frustrating. As any of you will know, if you've been councillors on opposition on a minority or a Labour minority council, you want a Labour government. Nobody joins the Labour Party to be a minority, in my view. Well, if they do, what are they doing there? We all join the Labour Party because we want a Labour government. You're going to get to be in government, some of you, before I do. I've only ever been in opposition in Parliament, but I'm hoping that some of you who are on this call, you're going to be in charge of things from May the 7th. That's both daunting and thrilling, because we all came into this to make a difference for working people, and we all came into this because we know, we think we know what we can offer to that cause. I want to work with you. I want to hear what ideas you've got. I'm Shadow Housing Secretary, covers housing and homelessness. In my view, it is an amazing job to have, a real honour, and I very much hope that I'll be kept in that post, so that in a couple of years' time I'll be actual Housing Secretary, and we will get to work together to solve the housing crisis and build all the houses and the homes that we possibly can, retrofit all those that need retrofitting, bring all housing up to net zero, crack down on private landlords who are dodgy, get a national landlord register, build a lot of council housing, reform the housing revenue account and right to buy, and just generally make it more possible for you guys to help me to work with you to solve the housing crisis. That's what I want to do. So more of you get elected, the more I can do as Housing Secretary, but I can't do it without you. It's going to be a partnership. Over the next few weeks and months, I hope that you'll get in touch with me with your ideas, things you picked up on the campaign trail. When you've had a chance to draw breath, about midday or May the 7th, I'll give you till then. Let me know what's been going on and what your ideas are for the future. And if you don't win, obviously I want you all to win, but if you don't win, you've done something important nonetheless, which is get the Labour message out to more and more people, and you've built up and you've mobilised people to be energetic about campaigning. That's going to help us all to transform this country, kick out a Tory government and get a Labour government, so that we can all make everybody's life better. So I'm really hoping we can get some good discussion. You can be about housing and homelessness, or about what's going on in Shadow Cabinet or Parliament, or about what you've been picking up at the doorstep, anything at all. I'm really happy to do that, and I hope we'll be able to take some questions shortly. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Thangham. Just if you have a look, Thangham, there's a question coming there from Jeffrey, and we'll come back to you. There's 4 parts to it, so I'll give you time to have a look at it, and we will come back and we'll answer that one live for Jeffrey. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to our other guest tonight, James Dawson. And James, over to you now.
Thank you, Paul. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me. well, follow that, as they say. Thank you, thank you. Firstly, yeah, I'm the East Midlands representative on the Association of Labour Councillors Executive nationally. So hopefully you'll all be elected in May, and we'll be welcoming lots more of you to the ALC. The ALC is the body within the Labour Party that works for councillors, and actually the 2% elected members levy that people pay, that is what they call the ALC levy, and that helps the party and Ellie in the local government team and Sean to put out training programs such as this, and they support us on a day-to-day basis. Why do these elections matter? Well, why would you not want a Labour council? Why would you not want a Labour councillor? They're far better than a Tory, a Lib Dem, or anything else. We are on the ground within our communities. So all of you, if you're new coming into it and you've never done it before, it's going to be a massive experience and a learning curve. Some of you might be coming back to it or standing for re-election. So as Paul said, I am currently the deputy leader of the Labour group on Erewash Borough Council, but I'm also a candidate for Derbyshire County Council in Ilkeston South. So we're in a two-tier area. So the three main bases of, we're going to hopefully get control of councils. And for those where we are going to get control, as Thangham's already said, we are going to be in government before the Labour Party nationally. We can make a difference on the ground. We might get frustrated that we've got a Tory government, but actually having control of local government makes you the masters of your own destiny within your local areas. Whether you're just trying to be the Labour voice in a Tory-dominated area, that again is so important. Where I am at the moment, I've got a Tory-controlled county council, I've got a Tory MP, and I've got a Tory-controlled borough council. But as the Labour group, we are still there flying the Labour flag, and actually we can make all the right arguments. The unfortunate thing is that is so frustrating in opposition is we don't have the votes to carry them through. But you are there defending your communities, and it is important, as we've seen this year alone. If we look at free school meals, it was Labour councils and Labour councillors that led the charge to make sure that none of our children were going home hungry during the school holidays. Tory councils followed in our wake. And with these county elections, they are so important. Things such as making sure that our roads are fit for purpose, adult social care, children's social care, all of the things that are really important. These are also the one things that we need to make sure that the Labour Party is fighting for. But also, we've not just got council elections. We've got elections in Wales, we've got elections in Scotland to the devolved assemblies there. And we've also got Police and Crime Commissioner elections. So it is a really important set of elections for us. So with that in mind, to support the wider campaigns within the seats that you're fighting for, and I'll just mention, I've already mentioned the PCC elections. We've also got by-elections in areas. So you might think that something's fallen into your lap that's a really good campaign issue. Make sure you're talking to your colleagues in the LCFs and in your PCC teams, because what might be a brilliant issue for you locally might upset the Police and Crime Commissioner's election if they've already got a plan for it. And we need to make sure that we're being competent and we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. So if you do have specific issues like that, make sure that you're going and liaising with those teams. The campaign, as Thangham said, it's been a strange year. But as a councillor and a community leader locally, I've found it interesting. The workload has been interesting and people have relied on you. And now we're getting back out on the doorstep slowly. We've done all the dialogue. It's been great to talk to people. But out on the doorstep, we're actually getting people engaged with us because some of them haven't actually seen or spoken to people outside of their four walls. They've spoken to them on the phone, but actually that face-to-face engagement is really, really important. We've been physically campaigning out for about 2 to 3 weeks now. there was some uneasiness, and we weren't sure what was going to happen on the doorstep. The response we've had is really, really good. And actually, what we did in my area beforehand is we actually did a little Google survey where we asked the question, if we were all in PPE, would people feel comfortable talking to us? And actually, I think 60% of the respondents came back and said, yeah, bring it on, come and speak to us, which has been great. Because that way as well, you're going to pick up issues as you go along that you might not have found just by phoning. My local Tories at the moment, they're in control as a county council, as I said. They're claiming that their roads are the best in the country and they're envied all over. We had Kerry McCarthy, the Shadow Transport Secretary, on Tuesday come and visit our area. We showed her all these lovely roads that the Tories have not bothered to look after for the last 4 years. And the local people we spoke to there that actually came out to tell us how awful it is. And thankfully, they won't be voted Tory. So hopefully we'll be delivering a Labour-controlled council after May the 6th. But it is important that we follow the campaign guidance that the Labour Party has put out. It doesn't just keep members of the public safe, it keeps you safe and it keeps our campaigners safe as well. Finally, the only thing I was going to say is everybody has a role to play. It doesn't matter whether you're a candidate or an ordinary member, or even if, like my other half, is just another half of a candidate and they're getting dragged out leafleting and everything else. Everybody has a role to play. And the more leaflets you can get out there, the more dialogue calls, the more conversations that you can have with people, then, that will lead you in very good stead. And as Thangham said, hopefully we will all see you as Labour councillors and Labour county councillors on May the 7th. But if we don't, it's actually planting that seed, that making sure that they know that Labour is active within their area and they don't have to live in a one-party state. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you both. And I'm just before I head into the rest of the presentation there, I just want to mention Simon By there in Tetbury, who did 26 kilometres last week, door to door. Great experience, fingers crossed. 26 kilometres, that's good going. I think I don't know, myself, I've got a little bit of extra timber from being quite indoors for the past year, so it's a good way to lose a bit of weight and getting out there, leafleting, door knocking, or whatever you're doing. I'm going to do a little bit of presentation, then I'm going to come over to Thangham and James for some of the questions, but also, if they just want to, if you've got any thoughts on the presentation as we go through, please both of you jump in as well. So, there we go. Where we are. I think we both mentioned the elections that we've got, not just council ones, but there's 17 days to go. Just under 5,000 council seats up for grabs, 40 police and crime commissioner, elections to the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Senate, 7 Metro mayors, the Mayor of London, Greater London Assembly elections, 5 local authority mayors, and 6th of May, Hartlepool by-election as well. Followed, in case that wasn't enough, on the 13th of May by the Adrian Shotts by-election up in Scotland as well. It's an unprecedented amount of elections occurring on the same day, but also there's so many council by-elections as well that are taking place as well. So, it is a huge effort. The Tories may have the money, but we do have the people power out there to get out there and make that difference over the next 17 days as well. So I wanted to start off with a little bit about candidate priorities as well. And obviously, Thangham and James, as I said there, we've touched upon it at all, what you were saying as well. If you haven't already done it, one of the little things is make sure that you take the day off, if you can do, or even that week off work as well. When I was an organizer, I remember someone booked their car in for an MOT on polling day who was a candidate. It was just, I couldn't believe it. So, I know not everyone might be able to do that, but if you can, giving yourself that everything, that time to, it's going to be a hard week, but really put that in that final week, put that extra effort in as well. If you're asking people to do different things, those people who might usually do the same thing for you might not be comfortable doing it. So don't rely on people doing their usual role as well. So you might need other people to do that leafleting round or something else as well. If your family and friends can book time off work and help and support you, ask them as well. They don't mean to be Labour Party members, but that individual relationship that you might have with them, can give you that extra 2 or 3 volunteers as well. Encourage our activists, as I said, to take time off as well. If people can't do the whole day, obviously just give us some of your time in the morning. Those early morning leaflets are really important as well. When you're asking people, if you're sending an email out, be clear about the lots of different jobs that people can do. Not everyone has to go out door knocking. We want people to be telephoning. We want people delivering leaflets. We're not going to be having tellers. We're advising people not to have tellers on polling stations. So I mentioned polling day later on. It's going to look different as well. We will have lots of people who joined over the last year, have joined the Labour Party. This might be their first polling day or first experience of coming out door knocking. So make sure that we are giving people that confidence, that briefing as well beforehand. There's a code of conduct with regards to postal votes. Make sure that they're aware of that as well. And what we are, we're going to do some national mobilisation as a Labour Party. So please do put your events up on the events tool so that we can drive people to them as well. And that might be other people from seats where they will have elections, but there might be might be an unwinnable stretch target to win it, but we can put them into areas whereby 1 or 2 votes might make the difference of us having control of a council area or losing control of a council area. So make sure that all of your events are up on that events tool as well. Postal votes, as I said, I've already mentioned that they should be dropping as well over the next few days as well. Make sure you have a plan. What I would say to you is, over the next few days, if you could spend as much time on dialogue, speaking to potential Labour voters, and also out on the doorstep, identified Labour voters who've got a postal vote, encouraging them to make sure that they return it. 80% of people will return their postal vote. The vast majority of people will return it within those first 48 hours. But if they have contact from a candidate, and you might be the only candidate who's knocked on their door, they might be a little bit undecided, and you speaking to them on the phone or being on the doorstep can make such a huge difference as well. So make sure not just you have a plan as a candidate, but also your local party has a plan of getting out that postal vote on the day as well. Obviously, I'm going to now mention, obviously, after the postal votes have dropped, we want to start with planning ahead those last 5 or 6 days as well, and your sort of GOTV planning. So let's have a little look at that. And these are all the different ways that we can reach out to people as well. Obviously, you'll have a print plan. You want your leaflets to be going out. We can have paid advertising using Reach, Labour's platform for placing digital adverts on Facebook accounts. Sending emails out to people, might be some organisations that you've met, obviously also to our members, on the telephone, through dialogue, on the doorstep, social media, but also that sort of peer-to-peer informal relationships that you might have as well. People who might vote for you personally because they know you, because you're standing as a candidate. Make sure that we're using those networks as wide as possible as well, encouraging people to get out and vote for you on the 6th of May as well. But it's starting over the last 10 days, reminding people to get out and vote, using their votes as well, not just wait until polling day as well. And when you do talk to people on the doorstep, I think Thangham and James would be good to hear, when you talk to people about it in that last week or so, saying like you're voting on the 6th of May, I always say to people like, oh, well, what time do you think you'll be voting? Is it early in the morning? Is it late at night? And people then, in their minds, they make up that plan, don't they? They might be like, oh, well, I'll wait until the wife comes home or the kids come back from school or after I've dropped the kids off at school. And if it sort of plants a seed in there and actually then making a plan of what their polling day would look like as well. James or Thangham, I'll go to Thangham first. Your top tips when you've been speaking to people, getting them out to vote as well. Do you have any sort of tricks or what you would use as well?
Well, obviously charm and wit, but never making assumptions. So one of my top tips is don't assume what you think you know is not necessarily the case. But I'd also say that certain parts of my constituency, if you don't get families when they're picking their kids up, if they don't go and vote on the way home from school, by the time they've got home and they've made the tea and they're getting the kids to bed, they're not coming out again. So we always used to push the volunteers out at school going home time. And we actually used to try and get people, both parents who are dropping their kids off at school, we used to try and get them as they came away from school and say, you could go and vote now, get it done. But we'd also do it again between 2:30 and about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We used to track where the schools were and the sort of routes. So I always made sure my volunteers knew how to explain how to get from school to the polling station. Make sure your volunteers do all know where the polling stations are. Yes, it's at the bottom of the voter ID sheets, but you're not all carrying them anymore. There are good web resources. So if you've got a smartphone, if your volunteers have got a smartphone, I would always make sure when they clock on for a shift, do you actually have a list of all the polling stations on your phone? Do you know how to get there with one click? My other top tip for candidates in particular is always have the number of the electoral returning officer or the council electoral services officer, the key person on duty. You will need to phone them at some point, or someone in your team will. And it might just be a query, but it also could be you might get someone alleging malpractice at an voting station. You need to be able to report it. You need to be able to make sure you've done it, because if you write it down in your notebook and think you'll do it later, you won't. You'll have forgotten about it and there'll be something else to deal with. Other thing is eating and drinking. These are both good things. They can seem like luxuries on election day, but I mean, a bit like if you're running a marathon, stack up on the carbs the night before. But I also carry snacks in my bag, ideally snacks you can share, but definitely snacks that you can eat. At the moment, of course, sharing is probably not caring because of COVID, but keep your wipes, your gel. I have a canvassing bag that I stack up the night before, make sure I've got wipes, gel, face mask, your own rosette, don't give it away. I've lost that many rosettes on election day when you just say, oh, you can have this one. No. And some snacks that you can easily carry around. Little bottle of water, again, gold dust. Plan your loo breaks. As a candidate, I learned really, really early on from my predecessor Labour MP, always know where your members who are perhaps older or less mobile and can't go out to canvass, but be quite happy to make you a cup of tea and let you use the loo. Just candidates. I'm not saying tell all your volunteers, oh, Mrs. So-and-so lives around the corner, she won't mind. But your members, your older members, perhaps whose canvassing days are sort of, they've done their duty now and they want a different duty to do. I actually think that I have got them marked on Google Maps where my members live that will let me go and use the loo, wash my hands, have a cup of tea. Now, obviously, that's harder at the moment. I know that. So what you're going to have to do is think about, are there places where you can't go and use someone's loo because you're not allowed in someone's house, but could you go and knock on their door and get a glass of water without going into their house? Do you actually know where the public loos are that you can use? So that's partly a future tip. We won't always be locked out of people's houses, and in a future world, you will be able to go into their house and use the loo. But you can go and knock on someone's door, some member's door, and say, "Can I have a glass of water?" And where's your nearest public loo?
Brilliant. Top tips there, James.
Food, drink, and loo.
James. Oh, I think we've lost James. I can't.
No, I'm still. No, is that better? Can you hear me now?
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. Yep. No, that's good advice. I think from my point of view, what I would also do is the night before, if you've got early GOTV poll cards that are going out on the day to remind people to your target vote, make sure your activists have got those the night before. So the first thing they can do when they're ready, they can go out and get those leaflets out straight away in the morning. And then also with your campaign teams and your districts, your areas, basically break down where is the best place to knock up at what times if we are knocking up. Obviously, it's going to be a different election day this year because of COVID. But if you've got access to Insight, that will show you the high priority areas. So for example, 10 o'clock in the morning, you don't want to be going and knocking streets where people will be out at work, because you're not going to get anybody in. If you've got an area that's old people's bungalows, for example, and you know that they're not on a postal vote, making sure they've gone out, gone out and voted. And also with postal votes, they can still deliver a postal vote in to any polling station within their area, even up to the close of poll on polling day. I know that there are people in the past who hadn't known that information, and they hadn't voted, and they said, "Oh, I've not posted it." And because the member activist they were talking to, didn't know that they could take it in and drop it at a polling station, they didn't get their vote cast. Obviously, not us as members or candidates. We don't touch them. But if you do have somebody who hasn't posted their postal vote back, again, and this is why you would have the electoral services officer, ring those up, let them know that, and they can organise getting that vote into the council. Toilet breaks, as Thangham said, yeah, they're important, and I think the most important thing is having a good pair of comfy shoes, because you will be 9 times out of 10 on your feet from about 7 in the morning till gone 10 o'clock at night. And then obviously if they're doing the count straight after, you'll spend a lot of time on your feet. So make sure you get a good pair of shoes.
Thank you both. And I think as well, don't buy a new pair of shoes for polling day. You want to sort of break something in, a nice comfy pair, I think is the important thing, because you'll end up with blisters. Other thing, just wanted to say, reminders about the final week there is obviously now, over the next week or so, we want to make sure if you have been putting up garden stakes, make sure they're all up. People are putting up their posters as well. That's in that sort of final week. That in your communications now going out, you want to be building up to this big push coming up in that final week of the campaign. So think about when the communications go out, when you're mobilising members, what they're going to say, what the difference the difference between having a Labour council run or what might happen if they don't get out and vote, that will end up having the Tories in. Different ways to motivate people as well. There's got to be a positive going forward, but this could also happen, that negative, if you don't come and help us. Bit out to door knocking now as well. Obviously we've talked about it a little bit, just to clarify where we are with that. Obviously we've heard from tonight, great feedback of what's on the doorstep from teams going out, as well as what the public have told us as well. Complaints have been very low, and it obviously allows us to, we have lots of numbers on dialogue, but obviously, getting out there on the doorstep, that be visible as well to people, and having that face-to-face conversation with a mask on, still can make a huge difference to votes as well. So, I can't underestimate that, overestimate that as well. If you are a first-time candidate, James has already mentioned it as well. There's targeted information that's out there on Contact Creator, targeted groups that you can speak to, who have that potential to be Labour Party voters or have past been Labour Party voters as well. If you are developing, there's national key messages as well that are available, but also, by now you should have that local script, which are 5 key messages that why, what you're going to do and why someone should vote for you as that local candidate as well. And I think also another little top tip from me, I think I was a councillor for 4 years, and I was a candidate a couple of times and got beat many years ago as well. But I think one of the things that's important is actually for when people are introducing themselves on the doorstep, not you, but actually saying, I'm here on behalf of James, or I'm here on behalf of Thangham Debonair and the Labour Party, who's your candidate. Using the candidate's name in the conversation is a really important thing to do. And if you are the candidate and you're on the doorstep, I've seen this before, when people don't say that they're the candidate. Do say it. You've got to say it. Hi, my name's Paul. I'm your candidate for so-and-so such ward on the 6th of May. We're out here today speaking to you and your neighbours about some of the important issues and how they might vote on the 6th of May. That's how you introduce yourself. Get it out there, who you are, the name of your name, the date of the polling day, and why you're out there speaking to them as well. Another little reminder there about collecting postal ballot forms as well. It's really important on that as well. Also, some other things for candidates as well. Maximising your time on the doorstep or phoning voters. Don't be afraid to do that. You've got to do that and might be thinking, oh, I've had enough, I want to just deliver some leaflets and put my headphones on and do a bit of walking. No, you've got to try and get out and speak to as many people as possible. If someone raises an issue with you on the doorstep, get back to them on that as well. And this is difficult to say that. I probably might bring in Thangan and James on this, but also as a candidate, you will be asked casework. People might want to speak to you for that little bit longer. But what you want to try and do is maximize the amount of people that you're gonna speak to. And if you are a first-time candidate, you might not have that experience of trying to extract yourself from that situation, but it's saying it politely as well. But think about how you can do that. Say, look, I'll get back to you on that one. Take the details down. It might be like, say, look, I'm with the rest of the team and I've got to go and catch them up. I will come back to you later. I'll email you or I'll ring you about that, and I'll take that up on your behalf. Try not to spend half an hour. If you're only out for an hour and a half on your session and you spend 15 minutes or half an hour speaking to 2 voters, that's not the best maximum use of your time as well. So think about that as well. Think about your role in motivating and encouraging other volunteers. You're going to have to keep that smiley face on as well all of that time, saying, oh, let's stay out for an extra half an hour, or let's do 2 sessions today. If you want people to come back out with you as well. And if you've got chocolates, food, or anything else that you can give to people in a COVID-safe way, you'll keep them coming back, and you'll keep people positive as well. And yeah, James, I think you're going to come in there.
Yeah, just on the casework issue. I mean, obviously, if you're in an area where you do have either district councillors or county councillors at the moment, whether they're retiring, whatever, working with them to pass on casework to get it logged is a good thing. What we tend to do here on our social media pages, we've got a message button, because obviously, GDPR and stuff, we've got to be a bit careful, but we've my social media pages, I've got a message button so people can message with their casework, so you can chase it up. They can email, or we also have a casework hotline, which is a generic mobile number, which I've got that have gone out on all our leaflets for all our candidates, and any casework, it will come into this number. We can speak to them after they've left a voicemail. We can then chase it up and sort it out for them and keep them informed. But the emphasis is on the voter to make, if it's something that they feel passionate about, that they've raised it with you, you can politely say, I'm busy at the minute, or I'll come back. Actually, can you message me on here with your issue, and we'll take it up and sort it for you. 9 times out of 10, if it's that important to them, they will do it. And that's an easy quick fix way of disengaging yourself off their doorstep and getting the casework at the same time.
I'm just going at this point, Thangan, I think there was a couple of quick questions about housing. I think before I move on to the next part of the presentation, I think there's one from Colin, and I think the earlier one from Jeffrey. Do you want to just...
Yep, I'll do them. So I've tried to type in an answer to both of those, which I'm just going to send now to both, but just to sort of amplify them. First of all, Jeffrey, all of those things, I'm considering all of them. At this stage, I've got some areas of policy nailed down. Others I want to spend more time talking to Labour councillors about. When we get past May the 6th, any Labour councillors who want to invite me to come and meet with your Labour group, whether it's on Zoom or in person, please do get in touch. I'm keen to meet as many Labour councillors as possible over the next year to discuss the detail of all of these. You do all have, on some of them, you don't all have the same view. So it's really important I hear from as many of you as possible as how those would work in your patch. Also, if you are able to join LGA Labour group, contact group for my team, each of the Shadow Cabinet, we have a contact group in LGA Labour to meet with Labour councillors regularly to discuss policy issues. So you could do that route as well, but also feel free just to get in touch. And Colin, I'm glad you think the message was excellent on housing. I'm sorry that the message isn't getting through to everywhere yet. That's, of course, we've got lots of work to do, but I have to say, I think we are actually cutting through really well on Greensill. the topic of Tory corruption has been at the top of the headlines for days now, and that's in large part because of the work that Rachel Reeves has been doing. Our opposition day motion last Wednesday, Rachel made an absolute barnstorm of a speech and did loads of media, which actually I saw wall to wall Rachel at one point. Keir also brought it up in his PMQs that day, really actually hammered Boris in a way that I have, really think Keir was absolutely on fire last Wednesday. And that was exactly on Tory corruption and sleaze. I've seen and heard Rachel using all of those words, including sleaze, cronyism, waste, conflict of interest, cover-ups, scandal, harmful, and corruption. So I've seen all of that language. Part of the way things get through is all of you. So that's on the doorstep. It's in your personal contact. It's because you're a trusted counsellor and you're able to talk to people and they say, well, I'm not really sure what's going on nationally. It's part of what you're there for on the doorstep is to help say, well, we've been coming on really hard about X or Y. So a lot of the housing stuff that I do, for instance, in February, we spent a lot of time on cladding, which doesn't affect everybody everywhere, but it is a big issue for a lot of people across the country, and particularly in Tory Lib Dem swing seats. So we spent a lot of time and energy on it. As a result, a lot of those people are coming over to Labour and they're going to vote Labour in council elections. And these are people who wouldn't otherwise have done so. It may seem very niche, but actually I think we cut through really well and we actually got the government to commit to increasing the funding by 3.5 billion. So I get that we need to put the message out stronger. I'm absolutely with you there. And I think that's part of a team effort that we all need to be part of. And when we get back out on the doorstep and we're doing it face to face, we'll get more opportunities to do that. But I also think I've taken your note. I think we can always, as a team in the Shadow Cabinet, always improve. And I'm constantly working with my team on how can we get our message to cut through more, better, wider, stronger, longer. So I'm grateful for the feedback.
Brilliant. Thank you, Thangam. And I just want to take a question from Simon, which was saying, Thangam, if you want to come in on this, can we reveal about what private polling is telling us about how we'll do nationally? I think any polling or it's private, but also the fact is that I think it's very difficult with there's so many different levels of elections taking place on that same day. And I've had it even when I'm on the doorstep. Sometimes people are going to, if they've got a couple of different elections, or I might vote one way this way, but I might vote for you this way. And there's sometimes people are splitting their votes between some of the elections. And I think, I don't think anyone could predict, or any poll is going to say how well we're going to do on polling day as well. And after the year that we've had as well, I think it's from when I've been speaking to people are. I think also there was a little bit. I think I'm being honest with the people saying, "Oh, I haven't heard from any of the parties." And when I've been ringing or been on the doorstep, and it's like it's having to explain is that we haven't been allowed to deliver leaflets or to knock on doors until recently as well. So we're playing catch up with people as well. And then I ask them, well, have you heard from anyone else? And then they usually say no. So, and that just plants a seed that we have been there, and we're the ones talking to them today as well. So hopefully I haven't answered it, but that's where we are, I think, on our. Thangam, any thoughts on that?
I'm not part of the election management technical team that has access to the polling, so I couldn't tell you what's in them, even if you made me. Also, I tend to think as a candidate, it's often better not to know. It's often better just to focus on what you can do. And polling, in the end, I know it's a cliche, but the only poll that counts is the one that happens on May the 6th. I've also found, like Paul, real variety on the doorstep. I was out in the Rhondda Valley last week in sort of deepest, what should be Labour Wales and is for Westminster seat, but the Nationalists hold the Senedd seat. But I was getting really interesting things there, which are about a very local candidate who everybody seemed to know, which is amazing. I've never had that experience before of a brand new candidate, but everybody seemed to know her. Now, that's meant that we were picking up Labour support that might otherwise not really have been solid Labour support. So it's very difficult to generalise some of these elections. Certainly in the west of England, we've got the West of England Combined Authority Mayor, we've got the City Mayor in Bristol, we've got the councillors, we've got the Police and Crime Commissioner. And I've had people, even die-hard Labour supporters, who said, I'm actually going to vote slightly differently for this one, but I'll be with you on this one, this one and this one. So I'm not even sure the polls would tell us much at the moment. I'm nervous because what I want, obviously, is for everybody to vote Labour, and then everyone starts going, right, great, we're going to get into government, let's get a move on. I just wanted to mention that being a first-time candidate, and someone, Carrie's asked here about getting support. My view is it's a mixture of things. I don't necessarily think that the Labour Party, we aren't always the best at providing personal support on an organisational level. I got my best support from Labour Women's Network, but it was tough love. I wouldn't say it was the sort of support where I could ring up the woman who was my mentor and say, I need some sympathy for this dreadful thing that's just happened to me. She was more likely to sort of be quite tough and firm with me about saying, right, this is what we need to do to get you back up and running. So I think the emotional support that candidates need, that is where being a leader in your own community means identifying for yourself who is your personal source of support that is maybe not someone in the Labour Party. I've got two friends who've, throughout my time in politics, have always said, I'm actually not going to be one of your greatest campaigners. That's probably not where I can be most use, but I will be your personal support. I will be the person you can ring up late at night when you've had a really rotten day and you need to be able to trust someone to be completely honest with how dreadful you feel and who really gets you as a person. And also I found that's really helpful, that it's someone who is going to love me no matter what. If I lose a win, they'll still be my friend. And sometimes in the heat of an election, actually the team you need to be building around you as a candidate, you're the one that's supposed to be inspiring them. You've mentioned Black Labour, Carrie, and I'm ashamed to say I actually don't know if Black Labour is providing any of that sort of emotional support. And I think that's probably a failing in me, and I'll take on to go and investigate that. But I think between now and election day, if you haven't already got some personal support, try and identify those, and also think about what support you're able to give other people, and you might then find that some of that will be reciprocal anyway. So that's what I wanted to say. And Simon, you just put, you've realised it's private. You worry that you won't do as well as we need to. Well, yeah, that's a worry. So let's get out there and knock some more doors and make some more phone calls. And I've got to be honest, I think it is quite difficult to cut through at this time. It's a very weird time, and all of the things we normally know, most of them don't seem to be true at the moment. So it's very difficult to gauge. And certainly I've had people say to me on the phone, voters are not like diehard Labour members. Voters will often say things like, well, I've always voted Labour, but on the other hand, you must admit Boris has handled things quite well in this crisis. And you're thinking, well, no, actually, he hasn't. And some of that, I think some of that is because this year has been so bad that people have needed to believe that their Prime Minister was doing a good job, because the consequences of believing that your Prime Minister wasn't doing a good job were resigning yourself to thousands and thousands of deaths. And that's not an easy thing for people to deal with emotionally, especially if you've been on your own, if you've been in isolation, you haven't seen your mum for a long time. I think that part of that is something that we just can't hold against voters, that some of them are giving the Tories more of a pass than they normally would. I don't know that that's going to translate into votes. But I think what you might be getting sometimes on the doorstep is a bit of that. People have wanted to believe that their figureheads were actually leading them out of a very difficult time. And I don't think we can blame them for that. But I do think that's why we need to start bringing that counter narrative around.
Just going to move on to James here. There's a question come in from Sarah, who's standing as by-election in Hackney. Safe Labour area, if anyone who knows Hackney. The quick question is, we are the government in Hackney. Many people on the doorstep feel exhausted, ignored, and that services haven't been as good as they'd expect during the pandemic. What do we say when we are the local government, we're in charge of the local government, and therefore people feel we're responsible for the struggles they're experiencing? How do we sort of pivot that, turn it towards the Tories?
Well, I think just to follow up on that, I mean, it's a directly elected mayor in Hackney. It's Phil, and his surname has now escaped me, which I don't know why. That's it, Phil Glanville. Thank you, Sarah. You know, and I think actually, you know, if you are getting those issues raised on the doorstep, you know, speak to Phil, speak to the cabinet at Hackney. Because they may have raised an issue which actually the administration is already aware of and are already working on, and you know, basically, as I said earlier, making sure that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. And actually, when we are in control, it's part of good leadership. You know, we've got two ears and one mouth, so we should all listen twice as hard as we shout. And actually, if residents are feeding back that they're not happy about something, we can't be that. We might think we're doing the right thing, but actually it's ultimately down to listening to the voters and what they think. And if they're coming back and saying, actually, don't think you've got this quite right, that needs feeding back in. So I would certainly have a word with Phil and his team. Just back on the question that Kari asked about being a first-time candidate and being supported by BAME Labour. If you want to email I'm sure Ellie will get this, either the generic councillor's email for the ALC or myself, or Jackie Taylor, who's the West Midlands rep. We've both got the equality brief with the ALC, and Jackie is a member of BAME Labour as well. I don't know whether they are doing any regional phone banks. I don't know what your region is, but certainly for me, our local LGBT Labour group in the region, they're doing a regional phone bank tomorrow for our LGBT candidates. I know National LGBT Labour are doing one as well. So I'm assuming, and I don't know whether they are or not, that BAME Labour are doing a similar sort of thing. I would imagine that they would be. But again, that's something that we can chase up if you drop me or Jackie an email.
Brilliant, thank you both. And I'm just going to continue on. I think a couple of people have asked about using Dialogue as well. And Dialogue, if you haven't used it, we have made a lot of improvements to it. We knew it was a little bit clunky. We do know that we do need to improve the music as well on hold there. That can be a little bit annoying, but you can turn the music down as well. It's a great way to actually speak to as many people as possible. If you can't get out on the doors for whatever reason. But obviously, the other things in there is that because there's laws around telephoning, you do have to sit to a very strict script around that as well, and that's with regards to the telephone preference services of people and how we can communicate with them. We're communicating with them for a survey. We can't have persuasive conversations with them, but you don't have to be a robot on the telephone as well. There's no harm in asking people how they are, how they're coping during the pandemic, and being friendly with them. But that script there gives you the answers, gives you the questions that we need to find out as well. And there's a little bit example. That's some of the get out the vote that we'll be moving towards over the last few days as well. We're asking people whether they've used their vote as well, whether if they're a postal vote, and if they're not a postal vote, and at what time they're going to be planning on voting on the day as well. And then see those slots as well. And then if you have sheets or using the doorstep app on polling day, then those people will be notified on there. If someone says to us in the run up to polling day, I'm going to vote at 4 o'clock, it'll be on those sheets, it'll be on the doorstep app. So you won't think, oh, I don't need to knock on that door. We've already spoken to them 2 days ago and they said we're going to vote at 4 o'clock. We'll just look stupid if we go back at 12 o'clock and ask them if they voted yet. They've already told us. We'll wait until after 4 o'clock and then we'll go there and ask them, have you voted as well? Or we'll phone them back on that as well. That's what Dialogue's going to look like. It's not too late to order printed materials as well if you haven't done that. Not just vote today leaflets. You want vote Thursday, vote this Thursday. Going through people's letterboxes as well. Remember, you're going to be funneling down who you're targeting at this point of view. If you haven't spoken to enough people, there's other models that we can use on Contact Creator who will give that idea of a propensity to vote Labour that you can widen your target pool of voters with. And we also do something we call it a pick list. So does everyone else call it a pick list, where you have a street list of and just put the numbers down. It has the door numbers, and you can just deliver your leaflets to certain houses as well. So our job isn't to remind Tories, Lib Dems and Greens that it's polling day on Thursday. We want to remind those identified Labour supporters and people who we think might vote for us as well. That's it's polling day. I don't care what it's up to the Tories to get their vote out. It's not our responsibility. So if you are doing stuff for polling day as well, sharp, clear messages. Write also your materials. This is all your materials. Write them for people who are thinking about voting Labour. not for Labour Party members. And that's just to think in different ways in your messages. Nice, short, clear, with dividing lines. Where possible, use endorsers. And if you're doing personalised plans, reminding people what time they've said to you, what time they're voting. Build an urgency. Going back to Thanga's point, letting people know if you're doing something on a smaller scale, remind them where the polling station is, and make sure you've double checked where the polling station is, and you've entered it into Contact Creator as well. Lots of polling stations from we're hearing are changing because some of the schools, which previously might be polling stations, are staying open and not being used as polling stations. So think about that as well. So double check them as well.
I'd also add to that as well, Paul, with your GOTV sort of eve of poll, day of poll leaflets, if you are doing them. Again, if you've got multiple elections, so in my area, we've got county council elections, we've got PCC elections, and we've got 2 by-elections in 2 of our district wards. Again, working with your colleagues. So, it might be easy, for example, to have one leaflet that says, use your 9 votes or however many it is for your Labour candidates. Of course, we don't want, what you don't want is to double the work if you can all get it on one leaflet.
Yeah, definitely. And I think thank you, James. That's definitely true. You've got to be integrating all of your campaigns. Use all of your votes for Labour.
I've got just to add to that as well. I have every single election day that I've done knocking up for. I've always been surprised at the number of people who have forgotten that it's election day. It's everything to you. So you find it hard to believe that there's anyone else in the world that isn't thinking, oh my goodness, it's election day. But most people have got other stuff going on. So again, never assume that your most loyal, enthusiastic supporters will have definitely remembered. You can help them remember by if you're doing eve of poll or whatever, or in the run-ups, just say, please don't forget, it's this Thursday, not next Thursday. Is there any reason why? Try and help anchor it in their minds. But when you're knocking up on the day, never be surprised that some people actually did need reminding and never take it for granted. Also know when to stop. I can remember on one election day that I had one volunteer doing phone knock-up who just would not stop, and it was 1 minute to 10 and we were getting very cross people. And we had to sort of wrench the phone out of our hands and say, people's kids are asleep. You need to stop now, and they haven't got time. They can't get to the polling station. I mean, that's the sort of phone banker you want, but on the other hand, set a cutoff point by which time people are having a cup of tea and stopping, and enjoy it. This is one of the greatest things that I think any of us can ever do, is stand for election. It's an amazing thing. It is a privilege. It's part of being a democracy. There are plenty of countries in the world that don't have this privilege, and treating it with the respect it deserves, I think, is a real joy.
Brilliant thing. I'm just going to go through these digital slides in a little bit there because I'm conscious of time and a few people are having to leave us. They've got other phone banks to go to and other things. So with your digital now, plan what you're going to say, record it now. Making sure that's exciting, shareable, and there's an ask of other people to share it and with other people as well. We've launched iwillvote.org.uk. Make sure you're sharing that with people, and they can tell us that they're voting Labour. And can get a reminder from us to vote as well. And we gather that data and that information. So please do visit that website as well and tweet about it or do share it or whatever you want to do with it. TikTok about it if that's what you do. Polling day. It's going to be very difficult this year. We're doing a session next Monday and more in depth about polling day. So I'm not going to cover a huge amount of it tonight as well. The aim's still the same, to get Labour voters out to vote for us as well. It looks like we're going to be able to leaflet, and it looks like we're going to be able to door knock. We're not going to have busy committee rooms type of thing. Previously, it might be we have smaller committee rooms or people are running them out of the back of their car with smaller groups, socially distanced during the day as well. Not one big central campaign point as well. So think about that. Or someone else should be thinking about that, but if they're not thinking about it, ask that question and find out what they're doing as well. Continue to use dialogue as well. Digital is going to be really important as well. But what we don't know, government advice can change as well. So please do look out for that. I think if Ellie has a look at what are there's guidance there for England, Scotland, in Wales, and then we'll pop that and make sure you have a look at it, read it and understand it. And everyone who's campaigning does understand that what they can do and keeping safe as well. And I think I mentioned this earlier about those people who might have joined the Labour Party after the election last year, during the leadership election. This might be the first time that they've met anyone else from the Labour Party in person, or they've come out to do some campaigning. And think back to what it was like when you first joined, that they might be a bit nervous, and they're going to come out to, so make sure that everyone's got a warm welcome. But obviously we can't give them a hug and welcome. Well, it's the first time you've met them, you're not going to do that. But just make people feel at ease, give them that support and training, guidance. Be careful of us using lots of our Labour Party jargon, because we do love that. And just just give them that warm welcome as well, and let them know that it's a great way to meet like-minded people, make new friends. And you never know, that person who's coming out door knocking with you the first time might be a council candidate next year, the year after, parliamentary candidate as well. It is really, I think it's Thangham said, it's a privilege to stand and represent the Labour Party as well, whether you win or lose as well. It's really important. So just wanted to pop that in there and just to remind people as we do that. We've got upcoming training coming out. We've got digital training. We've got training for young people, using warp sheets, digital training, using Organise. And not advertised, there is going to be a session on the count taking place next Monday at 6 o'clock, because I'm going to be presenting it as well. So that's why I know when it is. Also, a reminder, we've got Angela Rayner, Steve Reed, some other speakers. James, are you speaking? Do you think you'll get to speak on Friday?
I'm not, but I suspect that Simon Hennig, who is the leader of Durham and the chair of the ALC, will be speaking.
Okay, so if you can, it's a local elections rally. I know we've got hundreds, nearly thousands of candidates signed up to attend that as well. I think Ellie is going to pop that in the chat. You should have all had an email, another reminder email invitation over the weekend. So make sure, have a look through your emails and sign up to register for that as well. So it'd be really great if you could join that. If you want to get in touch with the local government team, it's councillors@labour.org.uk. If you want to get in touch with the training team, it's me. The local government team, there's only 2 of them. So Ellie's one of the persons who respond to that. 4 of us in the training team. If there's anything specifically for me, just put it for the attention of Paul. Legal hotline, hopefully you don't need them, but they are there. Our technology teams and membership teams, if you want to get in touch with them as well. So before we go, I'm going to have a last little look at the Q&A to see if there's anything could be. I think we answered all of them, or hopefully we've answered all of your questions tonight as well. Donald's one there. Okay. Did anyone? I think we did answer that one there, so hopefully Donald would addressed that one as well. I just want to say a big thank you to Thangham and to James for joining us this evening and providing some really valuable insight for the campaigns as well. It's been a lot of fun as well, which is, I think, it's really important to in these times as well, whatever activity you're doing, to make it a bit of fun and to get important messages across. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Good luck with all of your campaigning. As you say, we are here to support you, everyone in the Labour Party, to support all of our candidates. I'm going to hand over to James and then over to Thangham for the final words for going there. James, over to you first.
Thanks, Paul. I'm on Twitter, as you might have seen. I'm on Facebook as well. So anybody wants to contact me for any further advice, whatever, feel free to get in touch. But mainly, get out there. Good luck. And I hope to be welcoming you to the ALC as a fully fledged member on May the 7th.
I think I've said my strongest feeling, which is one of the greatest privileges you'll ever have to stand as a candidate for the Labour Party. To be a representative, it means you actually get to do stuff, get in touch if you get elected, or if you don't get elected, give yourselves a lot of rewards, but also make sure you're getting on with the job. Get in touch with me if you want to discuss housing and homelessness as a local councillor after May the 6th. And good luck to everyone. I'll be looking out for you all.
Thanks a lot, everybody. And I just looked at the chat there. Andrew, your problem, please email us at training@labour.org.uk about getting access to your site, and we will work with the contact creator team if we can. Just saw that last question come in there. I just wanted to answer that. Thanks a lot, everybody. Good night. Good luck.